I know we have a lot of other things going on this week, but if you are viewing this and it is a summer semester, we have 5 less weeks. So we do need to include a theory. If this is a normal semester, you're just on a normal schedule. So this week we're going to talk about Gestalt therapy and Fritz Perls. Now, every edition of um, Corey's textbook is a little different, but I like it. I like it when he includes um, quotations from both Fritz Perls and Laura, his wife. Um, Fritz died first, and his wife lived longer, and she gave us a little more insight into the process and Fritz, and I think she also gave herself some due credit that Fritz did not give her, um, because I know she helped him quite a bit. Um, I'd like to, I guess, just start and share a story with you. Um, so, if you ever have the opportunity, I know I've mentioned this before, if you have the opportunity to watch the classic Gloria tapes, um, Fritz Perls is one of the therapists for the Gloria tapes, and you'll really get a sense of his personality in those sessions. Um, so he's very confrontational. He really kind of, I guess he is sarcastic. He is somewhat abrasive. Not everybody likes his style. But what I can say is that I like his theory. And in order to use his theory, you don't have to have the same personality as Fritz Perls. You can be kind and genuine and use gentle confrontation, and you don't have to be sarcastic in order to use his theory. Um, his theory is one of the his theory has I would say, the most techniques out there, hundreds and hundreds of techniques. There are lots of Gestalt schools if you wanted further training in Gestalt. Um, so the story. So when I was a master's student, a lot of I came in at a time when a whole generation of professors and theorists, and they were either retiring or kind of teaching their last classes. I had a professor for expressive arts, phenomenology, transcendental psychology, all of those theories that are a little more creative, a little less standard. And I had him for his last class, and he shared a bit of his own experiences with us, Eugene Alexander. He had been in the Israeli war, which took place after World War II. He had seen a lot of combat. He had a lot of anger issues. I would call it, you know, PTSD with intermittent explosive disorder, but that's my diagnosis. And he came back to the United States and he saw a therapist, and it changed his life, and it helped him quite a bit. And so he decided to go into psychology himself. And I had him for his last class after 30 some years. He was literally one of the most gentle, kindest people I've met. We're like meditating in his class, and he's up front with little chimes. And when I was in my master's degree, all the classrooms had couches and beanbag chairs, and people would bring their animals in and food, and it was a little different environment. But anyway, he did, have this history, and I could imagine it was like this light switch. He was kind and gentle 99.9% of his life. But if you flick that switch, you might see that old Eugene Alexander appear. Anyway, he told us this story. He was in his doctoral program, and he was in California, the state. And of course, Fritz Perls was out in California along with the existentialists. I mean, there was a huge movement at that point in California around La Jolla and Berkeley. And his roommate came back, and his girlfriend had broken up with him, and his roommate was feeling sad about it. And Eugene said, well, hey, let's go to this party. There's going to be a lot of different theorists there, and we might get to meet some people, and it'll get your mind off all of your worries. And so talked his roommate into going to the party. And as soon as they got to the party, it was as if his roommate was this magnet, because I'm sure he looked down, he looked distressed. He wasn't happy-go-lucky at that point in his life. And it just kind of drew Fritz Perls, who was also at the party, to him. And he started confronting this guy that he had never met before. And Eugene's like, whoa, Fritz, don't just leave my buddy be. He's had a hard night. We just came here to relax. It's nice to meet you, but chill out. And Fritz would get sarcastic with Eugene and continue badgering his friend, and he couldn't stop himself. And after a couple warnings, Eugene knocked Fritz Perls out and literally knocked him over a couch. And Eugene was laughing when he was telling this story. All you could see was two little feet sticking up over the couch. And I'm just sharing this with you because some people have fantastic reactions to Fritz Perls. Other people have different reactions to Fritz Perls. And Gestalt therapy also brings out a lot of emotions. So you need the proper training, and never use a Gestalt technique in the end of therapy. Always use it earlier in therapy, because if it does bring out a lot of emotions, you don't want to say, well, our time's up, or we have 5 minutes left. You need to process those emotions. It would be unethical to release a client if they were extremely emotional because of a therapeutic technique. Now, Fritz Perls doesn't call them techniques, he calls them experiments, and we'll talk about that. So whenever you read the word experiment, it's just a technique, but he likes using the word experiment because it comes from the word experience, and he's all about in the moment experiences. So let's look at some of the history here. So the history you'll find interesting, I hope, because it's very similar to some of the other theorists we've already talked about. So Fritz Perls, 1893 to 1970, Laura, his wife, 1905 to 1990. He was born in Berlin to lower middle class Jewish family, failed 7th grade twice and was expelled due to trouble with authority. So you can see where this is going already. I'm not sure how much Fritz applied his own theory to himself. A lot of times when people have trouble with authority, they become an authority. I have trouble with authority. I used to have a lot more trouble with authority. So Perls eventually completed school and went on to receive a medical degree, an MD in psychiatry. He served, here's a big connection, as a medic in World War I, and of course the German army. After the war, Perls worked with Kurt Goldstein at his Institute for Brain Damaged Soldiers in Frankfurt, Germany. So think about who else, what other theories did very similar things with their history. He stressed the holistic personality. Who else stressed that? But Fritz Perls took it a step further, and I just noticed psychoanalyzed was spelt wrong in your notes. But so he took it a step further because he called his theory Gestalt Theory, which means Gestalt in German means holistic. Perls stressed, looking at the individual holistically. He later moved to Vienna. He was psychoanalyzed by Wilhelm Reich, supervised by Karen Horney, two famous Freudians. 1946, right after World War II, and he left Germany during World War II, but 1946 he came to the United States, broke away from psychoanalysis. In 1952, he founded the Institute for Gestalt Therapy in New York. So remember, we talked about people moving from Vienna to New York and eventually to California. He moved to Big Sur in California. If you get a chance, read what his wife wrote, the quote in Corey's book. Hopefully it still has it in this edition. I'm not sure. So let's look at his theory. We said Gestalt means holistic. His approach is based on existential and phenomenological theories. Phenomenology, remember, Duquesne is one of the biggest schools of phenomenology. It focuses on the client's subjective perception of reality. It's very similar to empathy. Existential refers to the individual's search for meaning and the idea that people are always becoming. And usually phenomenology and existential work together, even though their definitions are different. They work together. Perls, now get this. So remember how Rogers and humanistic psychology, and he believed in nurturing people to help them reach their full potential. Perls believes that people should gain awareness of self through experience. Individuals are understood within the context of their relationship to their environment. What did he say about people? Oh, here. His view of human nature, this is what I was thinking about. His view of human nature was that clients were manipulative and avoid responsibility. So a little different view of human nature. His theory stresses awareness of thoughts, feelings, and actions. People's behavior can be more important than why. His techniques were seen as experiments to improve self-awareness. His view of human nature was that clients were manipulative, wanting to avoid responsibility. He thinks that confrontation is key for two reasons. First, to move the client to become self-supporting, and second, to move the client to reintegrate disowned parts of their personality. Now, if you think about Rogers' view of confrontation, it's a more gentle confrontation. It's pointing out incongruencies so that the client might become more congruent. All right, there are 4 Gestalt principles, and you should remember these. The first one, holism. We must consider all of the dimensions of human functioning. Humans and nature are more than the sum of their individual parts. So that's holistic. Field theory. An organism must be seen within the context of its ever-changing environment. Everything's related and in process. So how is your client related to his or her environment? Number 3, the figure formation process. This is the hardest point to understand. How do individuals organize their environment? The concepts derived from the field of visual perception and the classic figure ground pictures. So I hope I included some pictures. Yes, I did, in your notes. So if you scroll down with your notes, you'll see the first picture. You'll either see black or white. The white looks like a chalice or a vase or a cup, and the black looks like 2 faces facing each other. You'll see one of those is more pronounced than the other in your own mind. Now, we don't use pictures like this in his theory. I'm just using these as an example. But you don't actually use these pictures in Gestalt therapy. This is just where he got the idea. So let me give you an example. Let's look at the other picture. The other picture, you'll either see a young woman or an older woman. All right. So think of it this way. If you see a client and they have some unfinished past business, and you use an experiment or a technique with them, a lot of times it will remind them of some unfinished business from the past that they need to work on. So it will bring that unfinished business from the past into the present through the experiment, and then you can discuss it in the session. It's almost like the black background. You first see the white face with a black background. But as your mind begins to think about different things, those two faces are brought into focus. It's just like unfinished business. A lot of times you use an experiment in a session and it draws out unfinished business from the past into the present session. It emerges from the past. It becomes the focus of the session. And number 4, organismic self-regulation. If a new focus or need emerges, one's equilibrium is disturbed. So if unfinished business comes into focus, then people are going to experience some anxiety because they no longer have that equilibrium. It is disturbed. And they want to regulate themselves. They don't want to feel anxious. The focus of therapy is on the now, the present. He wants to bring everything into the present. You can ask what, how, when, but he never asks why. And the reason he doesn't ask why is because it creates a cognitive shift and it moves the client from a feeling to a cognition. So rather than feeling, they start thinking. And he wants them to remain in the feeling world, in the experiential world, rather than the cognitive realm. Unfinished business, in order to deal with aspects of the past, they're brought into the present through experiments. Unfinished business is feelings from the past which have been suppressed. They need to be dealt with in the present in therapy. If not, they'll affect our equilibrium. He believed that unfinished business might affect us physically, in our bodies. Stuck point or getting stuck, this is an impasse. Client believes they're no longer self-supporting. They want help. So I really like the 5 layers of the personality. Let's look at those. So the first layer, the phony layer, he believes that people fear rejection. And they learn this early on in life. And so they begin to change themselves. They wear a mask, metaphorically. So let me give you an example. One of the exercises that I like to do in expressive arts class is, or with my clients, I have 2 blank pieces of paper shaped like a mask, both of them. On one of them, they draw or write things on the mask that they want the world to see. Who do I need to be in order to be accepted and loved? What conditions do they have to meet in order to be accepted? And then on the other mask, I ask them to write or draw who they really are. Who is the real you? And compare them. And in fact, it's best if they actually wear the masks and look in the mirror, and it helps them to realize, well, one is not the real me, it's the phony me. I'm only wearing this mask to please others, but it's not really me. The other mask is the real me, but I don't allow people to really see that because they might reject me. That's the first realization. Number 2, phobic. Remember, phobic means fear. what are they afraid of? Why did they create this phony persona, this facade, this mask? Well, to avoid emotional pain and rejection. So their next realization is the reason behind the mask, fear of rejection, or having to meet conditional love and acceptance rather than unconditional love and acceptance, as Rogers would put it. Impasse, the next layer of the onion. And 5 layers of the human personality, sometimes they call it peeling away the onion. Think of an onion you buy in a store. The outside layer is that brittle skin that's dead and flakes away. That's the phony layer. He believed that if you're being phony, you're emotionally dead. Why live a life that's not real? Peel away that layer. Phobic. It's still dry, but it's not that brittle. Peel away that layer. Impasse. Then you've kind of got that skin, that midway point of the onion. And it's just beginning to get hard. Well, at some point in the client's life, they got stuck in the maturation process. Maybe they were rejected. Maybe they felt, I have to change or I won't be accepted. Something happened, or multiple things happened, but they got stuck and they met this impasse, and they come to this realization in therapy. Bring up that unfinished business that's never been dealt with. Why did they change? Peel away that layer. And then you're in that green layer, that living layer. That's the implosive layer. They come to these realizations and they begin to think about who they really are. They think about letting go of those facades and getting in touch with their deadness or their real self. Peel away, that's all internal thoughts. Peel away that last layer and get to that healthy onion that you could eat. That's the explosive layer. They become alive and energized. They are not fake anymore. If somebody doesn't accept me, I don't care. I'm going to find somebody who will accept me unconditionally and love me for who I am. But I'm going to be the real me. I'm going to live for myself as I should. All right. 5 main types of resistances to contact, things that inhibit us from contact with other, real contact, meaningful contact with other humans. These are a little similar to defense mechanisms. You should memorize them. Introjection, uncritically accepting the beliefs of others without assimilation. Projection, that's familiar, not owning aspects of oneself, but placing them on others. That's Freudian. Retroflexion, this is the tough one. It's got 2 parts. Doing to oneself what one would like to do to others, or what one would like others to do to us. This is not the golden rule. This is not do unto others as you have them do unto you. This is a little different. Think about the meaning there. Deflection, the use of distractions such as humor, like being a class clown, so that others do not see one's true self. Confluence, a blurring of differentiation between the self and others. And that is an intro to Gestalt theory.